Everyone is looking for joy, right? But not everyone finds it. Unfortunately, some think it comes from having more, like more money, more success, more comfort. Others, they, chase after attention, the approval of others, or you could say like the perfect life. But the joy that we're really searching for, it doesn't come from getting. It actually comes from giving. I know it sounds a little upside down, and it's almost too good to be true. But for you to understand better, let me tell you a story, a true story. Now, this is a story of someone who had everything and chose to give it all away. They didn't find joy in being served, but in serving and in sacrifice. And they carry that joy through pain, rejection, and even heartbreak. Now, who is this, you might be asking? Saint Elizabeth of Hungary. And I'm sure that once you see her life really up close, you won't forget her. So for that, let me take out my trusty magnifying glass, and together let's discover the kind of joy this world of ours can't give. But it's the kind of joy that your heart was made for. St. Elizabeth of Hungary, she had everything. She was royalty. She lived in a palace. She could have spent her life in comfort and luxury. But instead of that, she chose something that unfortunately most people run from. What was that? Sacrifice, service, simplicity. Now, you might be asking, why would anyone do that? Now, she did this because she discovered something the world often misses. The deepest kind of joy doesn't come from being served. It comes from serving others. So, let's take a closer look at her life to uncover that joy that made her a saint. Saint Elizabeth, she was born in the year of our Lord 1207 into royalty, but her story would never read like a fairy tale. Her father, King Andrew II of Hungary, belonged to the powerful Arpad dynasty. Her mother, Queen Gertrude of Marania, she came from the Bavarian nobility, tied very closely with the Holy Roman Empire. Now, there were many saints that ran in her family. Her aunt was Saint Hedwig of Silesia. Her great niece was Saint Elizabeth of Portugal, which was named after her. And just at the tender age of 4 years old, she was sent across the continent to a distant region of the Holy Roman Empire. She was raised among strangers until she was old enough to marry Ludwig, the future Landgrave, a noble ruler similar to that of a prince. This arranged marriage was a strategic alliance between the kingdoms when Elizabeth was just 6 years old. However, for Elizabeth, it marked the beginning of a life characterized by detachment and sacrifice. She would never see her mother again. When Elizabeth was just a young age of 6, her mother, Queen Gertrude, was murdered by Hungarian nobles, caught in the turmoil of royal politics. And as you can imagine, this loss deeply affected her. She began offering prayers and sacrifices for her mother's soul and found comfort in her devotion to none other than our Blessed Mother, her new mother. But it wasn't easy. The ladies at court found her odd and resented her foreign presence. She was too quiet, too prayerful, and too unaffected by vanity or gossip. They mocked her simple clothing, her acts of penance, and her long hours in prayer. They couldn't stand the thought that this odd little girl would one day become their Landgraven, the noble title given to the Landgrave's wife. So more or less, give me something like a duchess or a princess. Well, back to the story of St. Elizabeth. Elizabeth wasn't trying to impress them. She was already living in a different kingdom. Beneath her gentleness was a strength like steel. She persevered in her prayer and good works. And in the year 1221, Elizabeth married Ludwig IV. This was when she truly stepped into her role as a noblewoman. She dedicated herself to her family and to the welfare of others. She and Ludwig had a joyful and holy marriage. He respected her mission, supported her charity, and was often with her as she knelt in prayer at nighttime. Even as a wife and a mother, Elizabeth never lost focus. She didn't separate prayer from action, and nobility didn't cancel out humility. And she instilled these values in her children. She personally tended to the sick, comforted the dying, and gave away food, clothing, and whatever she could. Her motherhood became an extension of her mission, and her children learned the importance of helping those in need. But unfortunately, as you can imagine, not everyone admired her. Her husband's family didn't always agree with her, and many of them unfortunately thought that her charity was too excessive. They began to question her choices. How could a royal with so much to enjoy choose such a demanding life? Maybe you've felt that too. Maybe your own family doesn't understand your choices, especially when they're rooted in faith. So, here's a question for you. How do you respond to family tension? It's never easy, especially when you're misunderstood by the people closest to you. But tension doesn't always call for a fight. Responding with calm and clarity instead of frustration is often the better approach. And that's exactly what St. Elizabeth did. She didn't start arguing or fighting to try to get everybody to approve her. She just kept doing what was right, even when it came at a cost for her. Her joy didn't hinge on comfort, praise, or an easy life, because her life wasn't easy. But her joy was real. And she had discovered something that unfortunately most people miss. She discovered true joy, the kind that lasts. It's found in living a life of sacrifice. And now, let me ask you something. Tell me, what brings you joy right now? Is it tied to comfort, praise, or an easy path? Or does it come from choosing, even when things get tough, to embrace sacrifice and suffering with love? Many miracles marked Elizabeth's life, often hidden in humility. Now, there was one day where St. Elizabeth brought a leper. Can you imagine? Just the thought of it. She brought a leper into the castle, laying him in her own bed to care for him. Can you imagine that? Everyone else, the leper, everybody would avoid. What would you have thought if you were there? Would you have supported her, or would you have judged her? Well, her mother-in-law was horrified and was unable to understand all her generosity and compassion. Right away, her mother-in-law ran to Ludwig to report it, and she was sure that he would put a stop to it. And when Ludwig went to confront the situation, something very unexpected happened. So when he goes into the room, and when he pulled back the blanket, instead of seeing a leper, he saw who? He saw our Lord Jesus Christ himself, crucified and lying in the bed. Now that is an extraordinary miracle. Don't you agree? I'm sure you do. Now, St. Elizabeth's humility was a visible reflection of her love for our Lord Jesus Christ. And in this love, she found true joy. It wasn't the kind of joy that you can buy or chase after. It was the kind that only, and I stress it, only comes from a deep relationship with God. A joy that sustained her through grief, challenges, and suffering. So, once again, I'm going to grab my trusted magnifying glass. And this isn't just a nice story about a royal saint from long, long ago. This story is meant to challenge us, to challenge you and me. How can we find joy? Finding joy doesn't always come from doing something grand. You don't have to give away everything that you have. True joy is found in acts of charity, done for the love of God, and not necessarily in material things. It could be just in some simple gestures. Sometimes the greatest act of charity are small things. Be like returning a phone call, sitting in silence with a friend, or speaking the hard truth to someone who needs to hear it. It's showing mercy when you don't have to. Loving when it costs you something. So here's the secret. The secret is we can't do it alone. We need grace. We need help. So where do we turn? We turn to our Blessed Mother. When we give ourselves to her, what does she do? She brings us closer to her divine Son, Jesus. He's the only source of real and lasting joy. And for that, let us consecrate ourselves to our Blessed Mother. Say yes and let her lead us into that joy, the joy your soul is searching for. And for that, I'm going to leave a link in the description below for this free consecration. I encourage you to take that first step. If you haven't made your consecration yet, make that step. And the story is just getting started. So in the next video, you'll see how this young princess, surrounded by power, wealth, and status, how she used her influence, not for herself, but for others. What does leadership look like when it is not fueled by ego? You're about to find out, so don't miss the next video. Unfortunately, my time is up now, but I hope to see you in the next one. God bless and Salve Maria.